Hello, good morning, Merry Christmas Eve. It's coming up to 9 AM and I'm just heading out on a short local circuit, about 18 miles. This will be the first time I've ridden my bike outdoors for about 3 weeks. My last outing was the hot tent camp up at Beacon Hill. The reason for that is I went to Paignton the following week to ride the Train of Lights with my wife. It's a steam heritage railway that runs between Paignton and Kingswear, and they light it all up at Christmas, so I'll put a few shots on the screen.
Was hiding back at the station, and I know just the person who brings all up to date on the storm.
How's the snow going?
Over to you, Mr. Talking Tree.
Thank you, Judy. Now the tree folk in Longwood Forest have had an interesting year looking after Doreen the tree.
It's a fantastic experience seeing the train on the outside all lit up, but also riding it as well, because it lights up all the cuttings and they put features along the route. It's just a really nice Christmassy atmosphere inside. I mentioned on my last video it coincided with the National Rail strike, so we got to Paignton OK on the Monday and they confirmed at the railway station there would actually be no trains on the Friday. We were hoping there may be a skeleton service, but there wasn't. They said you can just use your tickets either on the Thursday or the Sunday, so we just decided to come home a day early, which is what we did, and that all went smoothly, although the trains were quite crowded, as you can imagine. The moment I got home I felt I was coming down with flu, and that's exactly what happened. Just recovering for a dose of manflu, and then as I was getting better my wife had it. Whether we caught it together or I transmitted it to her, we're not sure, and that's just written off the last week or so. I have been indoor exercising on the turbo trainer and doing some running on the treadmill, so this is not quite as stiff and as breathless as it may well be without that preparation. So I'm just heading out through the two tunnels. Said it many times before, I live very close by, heading out to Willow. I'm going to do a really nice circuit, share some places of interest with you around Shoscombe Vale and Foxcote, and as many YouTubers are doing, reflect back on the year a little bit and share some plans and some thoughts about 2023. I'm now on the lovely section between the two tunnels. So behind me I've just come through the shorter Devonshire tunnel. I'm now in Lincoln Vale in this really lovely cutting. You can see how lovely this green corridor is, and I'm just about to turn into Coombe Down Tunnel, which is the longest tunnel in Britain without ventilation. And the moment you enter you're on a sharp curve, so you don't see the portal behind you after about 125 metres, and it's the same approach in the other end. You really don't see the light at the end of the tunnel until you're almost about to pass through it. So the middle, it really is complete darkness, and you know they've put up these LED lights which give this strange illusion of quite a low ceiling. But on my old axes I used to come through here a lot, and often on the early starts these lights wouldn't be on, and you really realise that level of lights is nowhere near the ceiling. There's a big dark cavernous curve above it. The whole tunnel takes on a whole different dimension. So although I live very close to these tunnels and I've been through them many times now, I never get tired of this section. I was 6 years old when the railway closed, so I don't remember it ever being used for trains. Although I do have a vivid memory of my mum taking me into the booking hall at Green Park Station one Saturday. I think we'd just been to the Saturday morning pictures. I vaguely remember looking out through the windows in there and seeing stationary trains. That must have been fairly close to their closure. And then, I suppose 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, we used to walk through these tunnels when they were still left open, but after closure during the summer holidays, pitch black. So that was an experience. And then the next time I came through them was after they were officially opened as this designated cycleway back in 2014, I think, or 2013. So quite a long time in between closure and reopening for cycle use. I've emerged from Conan Tunnel just around that bend there. I'm now on Tucking Mill Viaduct, and this is looking down on Tucking Mill itself. There's some lakes down there, fishing lakes actually. Quite often you'll find disabled groups fishing there, and then behind you'll sort of see the Midford Valley all covered in that lovely mist. And we're heading on this way past Midford Station onto where it became double track towards Willow. I'm now on another viaduct. This is Midford Viaduct. It's crossing the Midford Brook and also the main Bath to Hinton Charteris Road below, and cutting through that mist actually we saw earlier on. Very misty here, and this is where the original railway line doubled. And so there's a point of interest along here actually about the doubling, so more about that when we get there. But as I said about the review of the year, really it's not a comprehensive review, but what I realised coming out of lockdown was I just wanted to do some more exploring. It didn't matter how far I went, to be honest, as long as I went with the right frame of mind. I realised exploring places much closer to home made me see places that I thought were familiar in a much different light. So I've really embraced that idea this year. And once again, I've mentioned James before. He told me about thankful villages scattered throughout England and Wales. There's none in Scotland or Northern Ireland, unfortunately, where every inhabitant who went to fight off in the First World War returned safely. And I've started to explore those and locate the slate plaques that were placed there to commemorate the centenary of the start of the First World War. So they were placed there in 2014. I believe every one of the thankful villages has got one of those. So that's added a little bit of interest. I really enjoy searching those out and locating them. They're often at the church, but not always. So that's added piece of interest. And that would be the theme of my tour next June. I'm going to ride from my home in Bath, diagonally up through the Cotswolds, heading northeastish, skirting around Derby and the industrial Midlands, cutting over the River Humber into Hull, and then carry on a further 100 miles or so to a couple more thankful villages, and then turning westwards to York and getting a train home. So that would be the theme of my ride next year. I'll be riding from Bath to York, about 640 kilometres I think it is, following this corridor of thankful villages. I won't be visiting all of the thankful villages on this map, but I'll be visiting quite a few, and I've deliberately left some for odd days, weekends, maybe even future tours actually. So that's a big theme that I discovered this year, I've really come to love. And also the historical theme of just going down to Dorchester and exploring Wessex in a bit more detail. Again, these wall areas I cycled in old axes, thought I knew quite well. And once you go there with the aim to explore, not to get from A to B as quickly as possible, you definitely see it in different light. And so I did several of those trips this year. I really enjoyed that. Did a beach bivvy early season camp on Weymouth Beach, Swanage later in the year, and then of course my interest in Roman roads. I started trying to retrace possible courses of some more Roman roads because I'd enjoyed riding the Fossway a couple of years ago so much. and that'll be another theme for next year. There's this road, 4 it is, from London to Exeter, down through Old Sarum, Dorchester, down to Exeter, then that'll probably be a train home. I've ridden parts of it. I've ridden from Silchester to Old Sarum, and now the next sections I think will be overnighters or possibly 2-night camping trips from Old Sarum, Dorchester, then maybe a different trip, Dorchester down to Exeter. That's the theme I want to ride this year. Who knows, one day I might join them all up and re-ride it in one go, I don't know. And also, while I was tucked up in bed recently, I realised there was some sites of Roman temples very close to Bath, and so I aim to go out and explore those soon. I can't explore the temples because they're not there anymore. They were dug up by archaeologists and recorded and catalogued back in the 1920s, 30s, 40s and 50s. But I can certainly go to the scene where they are. 2 of them in particular are on hilltops, so I want to go there and just have a look at the view, maybe try and imagine what they saw 2,000 years ago. So that's going to be another theme of next year. And also, haven't ridden a 200km Audax for quite some time now. I really want to get back into riding those and possibly build up to ride a couple of 300s. I can't see me going any further than that, to be honest. The older I get, the harder it is to fit those sort of timelines into the available amount of time I've got. Basically, I've just got so slow, I can't do it really without being sleep deprived the whole way round, and I just don't want that. Cycling is to be, for me, is for enjoyment rather than proving myself in some sort of challenge. Wow, look at that mist in the valley over there. It's just drifting across this old railway line. You may see it, I'm about to enter it now. Oh, you definitely feel the drop in temperature. It's only a thin little wisp of it, but you certainly notice it. After dark, that'll quite often light up the beam of your headlight, maybe with water droplets as well. But even today in daylight, you definitely know the instant drop in temperature, and then the gain in temperature again as you pass through. Oh, the other thing I'll just mention quickly before I turn the camera off, when we're in Paynton, we got to Paynton, as I mentioned earlier on the Monday, and then there was a train strike, and we wanted to go to Dawlish and Dawlish Warren. We just thought, oh great, we get the train along, go to one station, maybe walk between the two, get the train home. And of course that wasn't an option, so we went for the bus. And whereas the train goes along the coastal plain, that spectacular bit along the seafront, right next to the sea, we had to get the bus, which went inland up over the coast. It took 90 minutes. And it was actually a fantastic journey because we were sort of on a holiday, so to speak. We just loved it, we really did. And we realised this double-decker bus went up a really steep, precipitous hill. I mean, you see it all round Paynton. You think people live up there, there must be roads up there. But this double-decker bus went up, and I didn't quite get the camera out in time. And so we said, hey, great, when we come back, we'll be coming down that in the dark as it's lighting up. And we got the upstairs seat right by the window. And when we come back, it didn't come down that way. It took a flatter, more coastal route. So that was just made us laugh a little bit. Wow, look at all that mist coming into Willow. So yeah, that was a good example of forced to use the bus because of the rail strike, and it just made us look at it a bit differently. We thought if we do that again, we may get the bus there and train back, or vice versa. And it made me realise, if the train dispute's still going on next summer, I can book the train pretty much at the last minute really, and they appear very flexible with your tickets. Clearly, if they've sold you a service, they'd rather than you have the refund, they just offer you that service on a different day, which suited us fine. And that may well be the case next June when I do my Thankful Villages tour and then need to get back from York. Anyway, coming to the end of this cycle path now, we're going to leave the track bed of the old Somerset and Dorset Railway here, cut through Willow stables, and then take a very minor road. This gives you a good overview. That's the way I've just come in. That's the course of the old Somerset and Dorset Railway. I've just taken this up here now to cut through Willow trucking stables and avoid this private property. And then the course of the railway would have gone through the stables. Then a few hundred yards further along, it's quite high up above the road, there's Willow Viaduct. I'll show you something interesting underneath that. So you can see this is just a simple packhorse bridge in its day. We've left Willow Trekking Centre, heading on this minor road, cutting underneath Willow Viaduct. Now it is right above us, and then the road will curl around there, climb up steeply, then bend into the village of Willow. Do you remember me saying at Midford Viaduct, this is where the single track became double? So as I understand it, when the railway was originally built, it was single track all the way, and then the company that built it bankrupted itself, and then it was leased to two of the big railway companies of the time. I think it was the Midland Railway and the Southern Railway, and they took this on, realised they had quite a good asset in their portfolio, realised it had potential to offer a cross-country route from the north and the Midlands down to the south coast for the holiday trade, and they doubled the line in sections. Most of it, not all of it, the bit between Bath and Midford always remained single, guess because of the tunnels and all the viaducts involved. But you can see here, and this is a pattern all replicated at many of the bridges between Bath and Evercreech down south of Shepton Mallet. The original structure there was stone, and when it was doubled to accommodate a lot more traffic, they just simply built another viaduct with brick, engineering brick, right next to it, and then just stitched the two together. And you'll see this pattern replicated pretty much all the way along this first section of the Somerset and Dorset. Original stone, the newer brick 20 years later. Anyway, I've got a picture that was taken just after Willow Stables, which would be up there and along a little bit. Looking towards Willow, there's a train coming towards Bath, and you'll see this minor road in the far distance. I'll put that on the screen now. I've now followed that road that was on the right hand side of that old railway photograph of the viaduct, and this is it as it summits and then levels out as it comes through the village of Willow. And I'm at the entrance to Willow Church, St Julian's. This is another example of what's on your doorstep. I've ridden by here so many times, either keen to get out from the locality to start a long ride, or keen to get home after a long ride. And I've never been in here until quite recently. Then during the lockdown, when we were very limited on what we could do outdoors, I came out on a video looking for an old canal tunnel, which is over there somewhere. I never did find it. I must have another go at that. And I just came here sort of thinking, oh, wouldn't it be so nice to go in? And of course everything was locked, and it was asking you sort of just to keep out completely, not even going to the grounds. And so I came out recently, had a look round, and it's a gem. So I'm going to go in this morning if I can and show you around. Look at that amazing view across the valley. Right out there would be the Radstock Trowbridge Road. Let's see if we can get in here. It's normally left unlocked. Really nice porch, Christmas wreath. Let's have a look inside. Yes. Couple of runners also popped in to have a look past them on the way out on the Two Tunnels Greenway. I didn't want to talk too much in there because clearly there's people in there doing church business, but they made me feel welcome. You could see it was consecrated in 1372, so a quick bit of mass. I think that makes it 650 years old, although there was a church here previously. So quite a gem. Those two guys, they were only in there probably less than half a minute. It just shows you can pop in and just get a sense of the place and then carry on your business. I love stopping it now actually. It's like that Joni Mitchell song, you don't know what you got till it's gone. And because there was so many restrictions during COVID, I just couldn't even get past the gate, let alone get in the church. You know, they asked you not to come into the churchyard, and you know, I respected that. Anyway, onwards. Next little piece of information is going back to railway heritage. I'm going to press on through the village now, just drop off and show you the site of the old railway station and tell you a little link to the Beatles, actually, the Beatles Sgt.Pepper album. So along here a few hundred yards. Now just turn down from the main road going through the village parallel to this, drop down at 90 degrees, and that's the site of the old Willow Station. You may see it's fairly intact actually, the old sloping platform canopy. And I'll try and get a shot of it on the way out, but there's even a weather vane in the shape of a railway train. Anyway, so like a few of the stations along the Somerset and Dorset Railway, they've actually been bought up and converted into houses, so I obviously need to be a little bit careful, not disrespecting people's privacy. But one of the early owners, in fact possibly the first owner after closure, who actually turned that into a house, was actually Peter Blake. He was the artist who composed the Sgt.Pepper's album cover. And although you can't see it from here, attached to the property is the old signal box, and apparently Peter Blake used that as his art studio. Doesn't live here anymore, moved on a long time ago. I've now turned right off the Willow Road and I'm heading on that lower section of the circuit on this very minor road. Going to drop down to the Willow Brook very shortly. That's it running along there. We're probably about 50-60 feet above it at the moment, but looking right across, that's Stony Littleton, Long Barrow. Now drop down to run parallel to the Willow Brook, and even though I'm just marginally over 7 miles from my home, you would have think this is like the middle of a national park. This is a little gravel car park where people park up and wander up to have a look at the ancient Long Barrow of Stony Littleton. I noticed English Heritage have put an information board up here actually the last couple of years. And look at this wonderful footbridge across here. Wow, that is flowing very fast and very, very high. I quite often stop here and look at dragonflies down there in the summer. They light up like beacons as the sun catches them. Gosh, I don't think I've ever seen it quite this high actually. It's a lovely little spot. This is the Willow Brook, and it rises up in the grounds of Stoneaston House. Then it flows down here and joins the Midford Brook, and then they both become the one stream, flow into the River Avon near Limpleystoke. I love this section of the Collier's Way. It's a very, very minor road that runs along here. And there's some World War II artefacts along here, I'll show you shortly. I was talking to a farmer there once, and he had some llamas in the field because they sell ice creams there in the summer. I was just having a chat with him, eating an ice cream, and I said, "Oh, the llamas for the wool, are they?" He sort of said, "No, they're for fox protection." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, a farmer friend of his had passed away, and his wife said, you can have the llamas first refusal." And he said apparently they'll live peacefully alongside sheep, but they'll rip the throats out of foxes, so they're quite good at protecting livestock. Just behind that wooden barn there, see if I can zoom in, you'll see a stone pillbox, and there's several along here. So in the event in 1940 that there'd been a German invasion and the British couldn't repel it on the beaches, they constructed all these stop lines. I think this was known as the Green Stop Line. I'm going to research it sometime and try and ride alongside it and visit the artefacts. But you'll see lots of pillboxes. There's a brick one along there further, and in the stream itself some anti-tank traps which are still there, you know, from what's that, 70 years ago. Here's a side-on view of that pillbox. Just round the corner from that gravel car park, we're running alongside the Willow Brook here, and then up there, that would be the embankment of the old railway. And you can see just by this little sort of drop, almost like a waterfall, there's some old concrete structures there. They're anti-tank defences. So it's all part of this stop line that was designed to impede or even stop the German advance in the event that the invasion couldn't be halted on the beaches. And we can see some of them a lot closer up shortly. There's a brick pillbox along here, and then there's some moss covered anti-tank traps we can literally just go up and stand next to and even touch down near Shoscombe. So I'll carry on along here and show you the pillbox first of all. It's absolutely delightful along here. Like this, you may sort of say, what's so strategically significant about this? Well, I guess a fold of land and some hills would have made for good defensive positions, but also you're literally just a couple of miles away from Radstock and all the old coalfields, the Somerset coalfields, which are long since spent. But I guess in 1940 that would have been an asset probably worth protecting. And here we have it, at the foot of the old railway embankment, the remains of an old pillbox. That would have been the railway up there, just about to cut across this minor road. And there's the stream just on the right hand side. After that pillbox end, I turned right at a T-junction, climbed up, so we're on the wall of the valley now, looking south. And this road, this is the Collier's Way cycle route into Radstock. You can see it's about to enter the village of Shoscombe, Route 24. But I'm going to deviate here. I'm going to take this sharp left-hand bend and drop back down, cross the river and show you the tank traps. Before we get there, right next to it is the site of the old Shoscombe railway station. There's a little anomaly there I've discussed before, so I'm going to go and revisit that. Drop very steeply down this hill. This paddock is the site of the entrance to the old Shoscombe single hill halt station. And there's the old railway sign there, look. But this board here is quite interesting. Let me show you what I discovered a couple of years ago. This signpost here gives you some pictures and a little overview of the station. There's a discrepancy here. There's the history. And it says there's a link to Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who actually was the author of Sherlock Holmes. It says the casebook of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle used this place as inspiration. He called it Shoscombe Old Place. And there's a section from the book. It says, on a bright May evening, Holmes and I found ourselves alone in a first-class carriage and bound for the little halt on demand, which this was, an on-demand halt station of Shoscombe. The rack was covered with a formidable litter of rods, reels and baskets. On reaching our destination, a short drive took us to an old-fashioned tavern. Well, we're going to visit that old-fashioned tavern in about an hour's time. It's just up there. We're going to arrive at a roundabout route. It's called the Apple Tree Inn. So that figures where a sporting host, Josiah Barnes, entered eagerly into our plans for fishing. Right down there would probably be the source of the fish, the Willow Brook. You can see the remains of the viaduct there. So the discrepancy is that book there was first published in the Strand magazine in 1927. It was written in or before 1927. So here's the discrepancy. This halt here, Shoscombe and Single Hill Halt, the on-demand halt, didn't open until 2 years later. So the mystery then was, how could he have used this halt, this on-demand halt, as inspiration for one of his novels 2 years before it opened? Well, I think possibly the answer is that he visited this area. There's some evidence to suggest that he could well have visited this area because he's described it quite accurately, and they must have known the station was going to be built. There must have been a petition, demand for it. It possibly had even been started, who knows. And also they may have stopped here unofficially as well, just to drop locals off. That sign wasn't there the last time I was here, so that's been dug out from somewhere and renovated and made to look really nice. Even got the gradient sign there, looks they used it going through stations. So yeah, there's the course of the old railway, and the platforms would have been just about here, I guess. And here we are, carry on down to the foot of this hill, underneath what would have probably been a steel railway bridge, the southern flank of the embankment, crossing the Willow Brook. And here's these remarkably good condition anti-tank traps. They're almost like pyramids with the tops lopped off, aren't they? All covered. Well, I don't think I'm going to go right up on them today, because you can see it's a bit of a quagmire here actually. See, they're in remarkable condition. Here's a view from the other side of the brook. It's course of the railway then, cutting through this lovely valley, following the stream, the Willow Brook. Remember me saying several of the stations on the old Somerset and Dorset Railway are now lived in. So Willow is one, Masbury Station is another, and Cole near Bruton is another. Whether there's more or not, I don't know. But we're going to visit a viaduct shortly, and believe it or not, someone lives inside that. But before we go there, let's go up and visit St.James' Church, a favourite of mine. After leaving the site of the old Shoscombe station, I climbed up quite steeply onto the southern slopes of the valley and came along the top there. I'm now just down in the very small hamlet of Foxcote, and this is St James the Less, Foxcote with Shoscombe Church, and it tells you here services from Easter Day to the end of October, in winter at Shoscombe School Church. Whether that's St Julian's I went in earlier on or not, I think possibly there might be another church in the school grounds, but it does say here St James Church Foxcote meets weekly at 11:15 AM, except on the third Sunday of the month, when you could visit St Julian's Church Willow or St John's Peasdown. So let's have a wander up here. I've shared this with you before, but I love coming back. Came up here for a picnic once one spring when my roof was all being refelted, and I just wanted to be at the house and not see the roof with no slates on or anything. I just wanted to leave them to it. So a lovely little seat over there. Great site for a picnic. That really high door. Don't think for 1 minute it'd be open, but you know, if you don't try, you don't know, do you? The footpath is very slippery. No. Always slow down, you give them plenty of room. Wow, look at that. If you do ever come out here in these sort of conditions, middle of the winter, be careful. It's absolutely icy slippery along here. Stones are quite worn and smooth. Lots of leaf debris and water. But wow, what a lovely location. Some fresh flowers over there as well. Such a beautiful spot. So I'm sort of at the far end of my circuit now. I'm going to drop down steeply, back down, crossing the Willow Brook again. That's where Foxcote Viaduct is, running alongside the brook as usual, and somebody's moved into some of the arches on that viaduct. Part of the viaduct was demolished to make road traffic safer after closure, but most of the viaduct's intact and it's been renovated really nice, and it's just such a stunning location. So I'll drop down and share that with you now. So I've just dropped down very steeply, crossed over the Willow Brook here. It does look like a little meander here actually, So it's not running directly alongside the railway for a few hundred yards. And there's Foxcote Viaduct. So it used to go all the way across. I've got a picture of it actually, and it was brick structure all the way across. And they took a few of the arches out. You can imagine the access and the darkness it would have caused here. It's a fairly narrow road anyway. So that was removed, I think in the 1980s actually. You can see just that one car going by how that arch would have caused a lot of difficulty, especially if cars wanted to pass here. So that was lopped off in the 1980s and then renovated. Made a lovely job of it, haven't they? Not going to go any closer because I don't want to disrespect people's privacy. So imagine waking up to this sound every morning. I'll try and get a side-on shot actually, because in winter it looks really nice. Gives you a really good side-on view of the viaduct. Now I'm going to carry on steeply. You quite often see that turf roofed actually on that. As you ride along the Collier's Way, which is just behind those houses, I would carry across this as a crossroads and take the final leg into Radstock. But today I'm going to go straight up, and it's quite steep a long way. Then it'll go up and do 3 sides of the square. It'll go up, turn right, through Shoscombe, past the apple tree, and then it'll carry on almost right up to the brow of the hill in the far distance there on the outskirts of Peasdown, and then it'll drop down more gradually into Willow. But yeah, look at that side-on shot, it's lovely. So yeah, I've got a bit of a backbreaker of a hill coming in, in fact 2. You may tell by my breathing, I'm at the top of that very steep climb. You got to get your feet in the pedals by the viaduct, take a run of that hill and keep going. So I'm now looking down on the village of Shoscombe. So I'm going to go along here, take a right hand turn, and then head down through the village. That's where the apple tree inn is. That's the one I believe Holmes was talking about in the novel Shoscombe Place. You may see that flat building there, private hospital. Anybody who drives the bus to Radstock Road will go alongside that. It's on the Peasdown bypass. And just as confirmation of that, you'll see right behind all the brick little shoebox houses, estate of Peasdown St John, or the commuter belt. Anyway, yeah, so along here, turn right, down to there, and then a left hand turn. We're going to head up steep again towards Peasdown before the final gradual drop down to Willow. Here we are then down in Shoscombe and the apple tree inn. So I've just come along that steep lane along there, took a right hand turn, dropped down on an S-bend down here. That's probably the pub Conan Doyle used in that Sherlock Holmes story. I mean, it almost certainly would have been familiar with this area, so let me try and explain. This is like the Willow Valley and the Shoscombe Vale. Just up over there, the other side of Peasdown, you drop down, that's the Cam Valley. And Conan Doyle in the 1920s was a frequent visitor to the Grange at Dunkerton in the Cam Valley. It's a grade 2 listed building. In fact, it's still occupied these days, and riding by that at night is quite haunting. Apparently used to go to spiritualist meetings there and seances a lot. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he would have come across here literally just a couple of miles away from where he'd been staying, and gained inspiration from this landscape. In fact, on one of my rides a couple of years ago, I tried to replicate a possible journey. Unlike today, rather than going around the houses, I went straight across, and it was actually relatively straightforward. Very up and down, being in a horse and cart in those days. What I had to do was cut through that new housing estate, because clearly the old road had just been blasted away and built on top. But yeah, to give you an idea, it certainly wouldn't have been a difficult journey in the day. And you imagine an author coming and seeing this lovely landscape and wanting to use it, as the location in one of his novels, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And as I sort of said, getting off the train, that would have been that fishing stream there, and also the inn that he refers to. Maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together and making 5, but it's a theory. Now what I've got to do, I've just lost some altitude. I've got to go along here, turn left, and then gain the altitude, climb all the way back up almost the summit on the outskirts of Pease Island, John. Another stiff, brutal climb before I then take a much more gradual minor road down through Willow to complete the circuit. Just on the Pease down to Willow Road, it's quite smooth, very gradual drop, just passing Shoscombe and Foxcut Cemetery. Not going to go in actually because it just feels a little bit intrusive actually, lady in there tending some of the graves. A couple of cyclists chatting along. I just pulled in here and somebody shouted out, "Hello Andy," and I just shouted out, "Who's that?" I mean, I don't know who it was. It's Mike, a mate of mine from years ago. We used to both ride in Bath Cycling Club. He lives round here actually. I just shouted out to him an old joke I know, as the Chinese waiter said to the club cyclist, "I'm sorry, but you all look the same to me." So it is difficult to spot people these days with all the helmets and all the same branded clothing and everything. I've now dropped down gradually and I've rejoined the circuit in Willow Village. Before I head back past St Julian's Church and then drop down underneath Willow Viaduct and get on back on the Two Tunnels Greenway, I can't resist showing you down there Mill Lane. It's a very steep drop. Across underneath the railway there's the remains of an old bridge there, and it's where all the locals, it's a favourite bathing spot at the ford across the Willow Brook, so let's hop down there now. Literally just 50 or 60 yards down this steep hill, you see all the water running off the fields, flowing into the brook, and there's the ford across, flowing quite fast. And of course there's a bridge going across here as well. But normally I would just ride across that, there'd be no water at all in the summer. I just wanted to come down and see this. I'd even ride across that at lower water level, but you wouldn't want to ride across that now. In fact, I've just seen a car turn around, come down and have second thoughts. So just round the corner, the road splits off to the left and it carries on up gradually through a site of special scientific interest, comes out at Hinton. That's the less intense of the three climbs, and then it bears round the right and splits in a Y, and both are sheer right up on top. There's a really high road along there, runs along through Falkland Froome Way. So old cars coming across here, let's get out of his way. Never realised cars could get across here.
Squeeze over.
That side upstream towards Foxcut looks quite tame. And of course there's a couple of little drops here. Oh, here's a car coming through, let's have a look. Looks like he's going to give it a go. I gotta go back up there in a minute. Didn't quite get it in time, a scrambler just came across there. So another car came down here, had a look at that, turned round and has gone back. So far, one car has driven across. Oh, here's another one coming, look. So far then, one car came down, reversed, and I thought it was going to try and turn in that corner and go back up the hill, but it reversed and then came over the footbridge there. Didn't realise that was possible, it was very tight. Then another car came by, then that motorbike's just come by, then another car has just driven through it, but before that one came down, had a look at that, turned in this turning circle here and went back up that way. So it's doable, certainly hats off that guy coming across on the motorbike, because that could have been so slippery. Imagine going down on that on a motorbike. I'm going to sign off here. Hope you found today interesting. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Hope you've had a great time, and